This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. Dispatches is also supported by the public affairs firm O'Donnell & Associates. For more information, check out o'donnellsolutions.com. But if the DSCC drops a big bag of money, are you going to be like, hey, who is this from? Where did all this money come from?
Quite frankly, I'm not sure where the DSCC is going to be in this race and how they're
probably
playing,
not for Rolison.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. I would imagine not.
I've also declared war on potholes, so here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a WCNY podcast about power and politics in New York. And on this episode, we're eyeballing a GOP-controlled state Senate seat that Democrats have been coveting since redistricting and is considered one of their best chances for growing their majority in 2027. The district is currently represented by Rob Rolison, who served on the Dutchess County Legislature before being elected to 2 terms as mayor of Poughkeepsie. His 2024 victory was by less than 2 points. And our guest is Poughkeepsie Common Council member Evan Menist, one of a handful of Democrats vying to represent the 39th Senate District, which includes the cities of Beacon, Poughkeepsie, and Newburgh. Welcome to the show, Evan.
Thanks for having me.
So you did a tour of duty in the Senate as a staffer, and it appears the experience didn't spoil the place for you. So what makes you want to come back as a senator?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved spending my time here in 2021 and 2022 when I worked for State Senator Elijah Reichlin Melnick. Wow, even I can't get the name right.
It's
all these
tough.
Years later.
Even if you know it, it's a tough one to get right.
It was a phenomenal experience working here. We, at the time, obviously, the Senate was controlled by the Democrats with that supermajority, that all-important supermajority that everyone keeps talking about. And the most important part for me was being able to be a part of passing legislation that really was able to improve people's lives in New York State and move the needle forward. So for me, I've always kind of thought of myself as a public servant and, been interested in doing work that's going to advance the interests of society and make life better for all of our, fellow people. And having that window into how state government worked really showed me that there's a path here that I can step in and kind of make some change and make life a little bit easier for the people in my community who, quite frankly, are struggling right now with the cost of living crisis that we're all dealing with.
Well, given that window that you were afforded into the state legislature, do you think that there are elements of the legislative process that should be changed? Is there any ideas that you have kicking around for improving how maybe the state Senate operates?
I mean, look, I'm not going to come in here and say that I can, spending one term working as a staffer in the Senate, that I can change Albany completely. Or
fresh eyes help. There's the argument that people just get used to the old way of doing things, and that's the people who are new to the Senate, who are new to the LCA, who see things in a different way, and that they're really the instigators for positive change. So I wouldn't say you aren't in a good position to call for change.
What I know is what I've been saying on the campaign trail, which quite frankly is that the system overall that we live in, not just as New Yorkers, but as Americans, is broken. Mm-hmm. And like I said, families in the Hudson Valley are being absolutely crushed by the cost of living. And so my first priorities aren't going to be coming into Albany to change the way that Albany works just to, make the process smoother or anything like that. But it is to use any and all tools at my disposal, knowing at least a bit about how the system works, to come in here and make immediate impact on improving the cost of living, making life more affordable for folks in the Hudson Valley, creating better opportunities for jobs and higher wages to make sure that people can afford to live. Because right now, nobody actually cares about how Albany works where I live. What they care about is the fact that they can't pay their mortgage, they can't pay their property taxes, they can't pay their rent, utilities and groceries are unaffordable, healthcare and childcare are unaffordable. That's really what my focus is exclusively on.
So if we have all of these problems, how are you going to campaign against the vote the bums out mentality that everyone should apparently be embracing because things are so bad? We had Democratic majorities now in both houses for 6 years. We've had Democratic governors for 2 decades. It sounds like you have your work cut out defending this hellscape that Democrats have left New York.
Well, we know for a fact that Republicans controlled the Senate for quite a long time, and
Sure.
that since Democrats have taken control of the
Not
Senate,
in 6 years, though.
Since Democrats have taken control of the Senate, there has been just the floodgates have opened on legislation that has been passed in the state that has been improving life for people in New York.
What would you point to?
I would point to, first and foremost, one of the things that got done in I think the first budget when Senator Reichlin Melnick was here, when I was working for him, making the commitment to fully fund foundation aid for the school districts across New York State. And I believe the state has made good on that over the past several terms. What is important to note, though, is when we talk about the cost of living for our local communities and families there is part of the extreme cost of living, especially in the Hudson Valley, are local property taxes. And a lot of that is driven in part by the price of school taxes. And so if the state can step up and deliver on more of that foundation aid funding, they can perhaps take a look at changing the formula, which I know has always been a hot button issue. But whenever the state can step in and deliver more funding, instead of property taxpayers funding those local municipal systems, whether
Sure.
they be schools or, roads or your municipal government, whatever it is, that is a more equitable way to fund local government than it is with property taxes, and it makes it more affordable to live. What I see as part of my responsibility coming into Albany would be to help continue to push for more equitable taxes at the state level where we can make the billionaires finally pay their fair share.
That sounds like an increase then in income taxes and an increase in corporate tax rates?
What I know is that right now, billionaires and special interests are hoarding more wealth than ever before.
Okay.
The wealth disparity in this state and in this country are worse than they have ever been, worse than the Gilded Age.
Even though we have a more progressive tax structure than any other state really in the country?
Regardless of what the current tax structure is, it is still not a fair tax structure where people who are working every day for a living, it doesn't matter if you are a blue-collar worker or a white-collar worker, you are getting a raw deal. On the other hand, billionaires have hoarded more wealth and corporate special interests have hoarded more wealth than any other time in history.
Well, you mentioned the idea of the all-important supermajority earlier in the state Senate, and for people who aren't familiar, that is theoretically important if lawmakers were going to do an override of
Sure.
a veto, or if the governor thought there was actually going to be an override of a veto and maybe would respond to negotiations differently. Do you think, because we've heard a lot of that rhetoric that you just espoused from the Senate, from the Assembly previously, do you think you being the 42nd, 43rd, whatever it would be, member of the Democratic Conference, would that actually make a difference by itself, or would something else have to change to see that number of Democratic senators make a big difference here in Albany? Because from my perspective, I don't really see a big difference whether it's 39 Senate Democrats to 42 or 43.
I think we saw it happen in 21 and 22 when I was here working for Senator Reichlin Melnick.
Isn't 21 kind of an off year because of how crazy things were with the governor being told to resign by most of his party?
Yes, and my boss at the time, Senator Reichlin Melnick, I think was one of the first to call for that resignation here in Albany among the Senate Democrats. But while that may have been a weird scenario, I think what's important to remember is we were also facing an affordability crisis. And when Senator Reichlin Melnick ran for office in 2020, we talked about a lot of these same exact things. People were scared. The economy was not doing well. We were in a time when people were afraid of what was going to be happening next. There was a lot of economic angst in our state and in our country. And right now, we are facing what I would argue is a more terrifying economic crisis where people simply cannot afford to live. And this is a continuing trend that is being exacerbated by the policies at the federal level. And we're not going to be able to make a change at the federal level in the immediate future, unless we have a major change in 2026 that the House changes and the Senate changes, and even then it would need to be enough of a change to take incredible action against the president and his administration. The real path to solving these problems for people lies through the state government here in the state of New York. And we cannot just tinker around the edges. We need to take real, like I said, bold, progressive, decisive action to institute new structures to either tax billionaires or tax the corporate special interests that are hoarding this wealth. We can't continue on with the way that things are going.
For the holiday season, Dispatches from Planet Albany is offering a special gift when you support the show. A $50 contribution or recurring commitment of $5 a month gets you a 12x9 poster celebrating life in Planet Albany. More information, including a link to donate, can be found wherever you listen to this podcast. Support for Dispatches from Planet Albany provided by National Fuel. Natural gas delivers affordable, reliable energy to millions of New Yorkers every day. Trusted utilities are committed to keeping homes warm, businesses running, and communities thriving. Natural gas is a critical part of an all-of-the-above energy strategy, one that prioritizes sustainability for the Empire State's future. Learn more at betterplannobans.com. Let's stick with the math and whether it's mathin', because one of the things that doesn't make sense on the face of it is this district being represented by a Republican.
Sure.
In 2024, Democrats outnumbered Republicans by about 27,000 in a district with about 238,000 voters. The latest numbers for November 2025 have that edge down to about 24,000 voters, but the district has also shrunk by about 10,000 voters. What is it about the Democratic machines in Poughkeepsie, Beacon, Newburgh that seem to not really get their shit together year after year after year? And how do you overcome that? Is this an issue about the infrastructure itself? Is there something unique about these Democratic voters where they just like having Republicans in office? Because it seems to be a problem for Democrats.
I think there's a lot of context that doesn't materialize around those numbers immediately. And so, I've been involved locally in organizing and Democratic politics in the city of Poughkeepsie and Dutchess County since really the tail end of 2018 is only when I first started getting involved.
The first midterms under a Trump administration.
Right. The first blue wave. And
yes.
Are we due for another one? Who knows?
I mean, historically would suggest yes.
Well, I mean, since I'm running, I'm hopeful that's the case, right? Of course. But what we've seen is with the distribution of Democratic voters around the city and town of Poughkeepsie and the city of Beacon and the city of Newburgh, which are the majority of the population of this district in the 39th, they have previously been outweighed by voters who show up to the polls more often, but living in more suburban and rural parts of Dutchess and Orange counties.
So why is that, though? Why isn't there an infrastructure to turn out all of those people and to utilize that Democratic edge?
So I can't really speak to what happened before I started getting involved in 2018, but what I can tell you is that over the past 8 years since I've been involved, I have seen an incredible effort by people who've been there, some people who've been there for a very long time, and a lot of newcomers and a lot of excitement about waking up and understanding that we need to change local government to make sure that we can have an impact at the county level, at the state level, and then at the federal level. And you've seen that change over time in this area.
But not in the Rolison seat. He won by 6 points in 22 and 2 points in 24.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to talk specifically about this district.
Please, why Rob Rolison has been successful twice now.
Well, he's been less successful every time he's run for office over the last 10 years, right? If he were to have run for a third term as mayor, which he could not do because of term limits, he would have been blown out of the water by Yvonne Flowers, who's our current mayor. And he's lost in the city of Poughkeepsie in his 2 runs for the state Senate seat.
Sure, but the district's bigger than the city of Poughkeepsie.
The district's a lot bigger than the city of Poughkeepsie. I think what we have seen in this district when he first ran for the seat, we had a backlash election against Biden in the White House.
Sure.
It was, a red wave that year, and we saw that here all across the state of New York. I think incumbency plays a role in 2024, but it was still a close race. I think incumbency played a role in 2024 as well, but he won by less again in 2024. And I think his long-term relationships in the city and town of Poughkeepsie really are the driver in that vote difference in 2024. Both candidates who ran in 2022 and 2024, two women who I respect tremendously and have done incredible work in Dutchess County, Julie Shiroishi in 2022 and Yvette Valdez-Smith in 2024. I think because the city and town of Poughkeepsie combined are 30% of the district, and Rob Rolison has spent 30 plus years in that community serving as a police officer in the town of Poughkeepsie and then as a county legislator and mayor. That's an uphill battle to overcome personal relationships that people create over that time. And so I think it was very difficult to get some of those more moderate votes out of the city and town of Poughkeepsie to come over towards our Democratic candidates, despite them being phenomenal candidates.
Were they? I mean, maybe on paper, I heard lots of issues with their campaigns, especially Julie's in 2022.
I think Julie ran a great race. I think, again, this was a district that came out of redistricting. Mm-hmm. No one expected this district to be created, and when this district was created,
especially not Jim Skoufis.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There was
thought he was going to have Newburgh.
Conversation about was who was going to run where, and this is a district that doesn't represent what the districts looked like in this area mm-hmm. for a long time. Right. So when this district was created, I think Rolison had probably the best name ID for the largest part of the district, and I think that went a long way in helping him secure what was a narrow victory in 2022. And in 2024, we see that Yvette made tremendous gains and that it was still really close. And I think if you flip about 1,000 votes in the Poughkeepsie area for someone who has long-lasting relationships, I've lived in Poughkeepsie now my entire adult life. I've lived there longer than anywhere else in my life. You can see that flip happen. Do
you flip votes just by riding a blue wave, or is there something different that your campaign would do than what we've seen those other Democratic campaigns do?
I think there's a few things. I think there's sure, the blue wave helps, mm-hmm. right? If that materializes. Second of all, I have long-term, long-lasting relationships with people in the city and town of Poughkeepsie where, even though I've only been working in politics for the last 8 years in the city and town of Poughkeepsie, for the last 17 years, I've been building a home, building a community in the Poughkeepsie area, and I have deep relationships with people throughout many different parts of the community.
So then are you going to have a problem in Beacon and Newburgh where Rolison won't because he's represented this broader area for 2 terms now?
I do not believe that Rolison has deep connections in Beacon or Newburgh,
okay.
Period, end of sentence. And so cast that aside, but also in spite of that, I also spent 3 years working in Newburgh. Mm-hmm. I worked for an organization called Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress. I worked all up and down the Hudson Valley. I've worked in Beacon. I've worked in Newburgh. I have spent a lot of time building relationships all throughout the Hudson Valley and in Albany. And, I like to work across all different lines in our community. I've been around for a long time, even though I'm 34, but I've spent a lot of time building these relationships. And I think flipping votes based on just relationships throughout the community in Poughkeepsie, I think you can flip enough votes. Well, just looking at the numbers, it seems you can flip enough votes just kind of based on that against Rolison, even from people I've already talked to in our community who are like, I liked, Julie and Yvette. I think they had a lot to say. I went with Rob because I've known him for a long time and I trust him in Albany, and I never thought that it would matter much. But I talk to them now and they're like, you know what, Evan, I trust you just as much as Rob, and I can see now why it's so important that we have Democratic representation in the state Senate.
So are you focusing then on flipping voters as opposed to turning out voters who maybe sat on their hands and were Democrats who just didn't vote in 2022 and 2024? I mean, who do you see as low-hanging fruit comparatively?
I am not that deep in the weeds on this because, quite frankly, what I'm focusing on is bringing my message out to people that, like I said, the system is broken and people are being crushed by the cost of living. And regardless of who they blame for that, So like I said, flipping votes is one thing, and I think those votes can flip in the Poughkeepsie area. But regardless of that, I think you can bring out new voters into the process just by talking about this message that I think resonates with people across all different party lines. Making sure people can afford a place to live, they can afford food, they can afford transportation, they can afford healthcare, they can afford childcare, like the most basic things that it means to have a fulfilling and successful life, or just any life whatsoever. And right now, the system is failing these people.
Well, with the time we have left, are you ready for our lightning round?
Sure.
Congestion pricing, should it be overturned by the legislature, or should the system be left in place?
I really haven't looked at congestion pricing as an issue. Really. I think
that sounds to my naive ears as kind of a dodge on the question.
Well, what I'll tell you is, looking at this district, we have pretty great transit access. Mm-hmm. So I think the majority of commuters in my community are commuting, if they're commuting to the city, are commuting via the train. And I'm definitely thankful for the new Super Express train that we've had added in Poughkeepsie, and the new trains that have been added to the line that are also increasing the speeds. And I truly believe in transit as really a tool for increasing, rebuilding our economy throughout the Mid-Hudson Valley, but also as a tool for fighting back against climate change.
You and likely every other suburban Democrat in New York are going to be labeled as the best friend of Zoran Mamdani, whether you've met him or not. But in the future, when you are running in 2026, are you going to have to run away from Zoran Mamdani, or do you feel like he has an agenda that you can run toward with whatever he might be pushing as New York City mayor?
Zoran Mamdani is going to be mayor of New York City.
Sure.
I am running to be state senator in Poughkeepsie.
He's going to come up in ads.
Newburgh.
He's going to come up in GOP ads.
Look, here's the thing. I mean, the GOP runs whatever kind of ads they want. They run some of the craziest ads. And in New York State, they run some of the craziest ads I've ever seen.
So you won't feel pressure to respond?
I mean, look, he's going to do what he's going to do in New York City, but let's talk about what the message really is. Giving people a future that they can believe in. That is what I want for the Hudson Valley. I want people to be able to believe that you can afford to live in the Hudson Valley. For generations now, people who have lived in the Hudson Valley have seen their children grow up, go away to college, and not come back because they can't afford it. And we are at a crisis right now. It's impossible to get ahead right now. So I think building that vision for people, that we can build a Hudson Valley that is affordable, is really important. So building that vision, Zoran has that same vision for New York City. I agree with that vision. I also believe that we should have fare, free, reliable buses in the Mid-Hudson Valley. Ulster County did it across the river from this district. We saw ridership increase dramatically. I worked for County Executive Jen Metzger for a little over a year when she first came into office to finish up Pat Ryan's term. And when we were there, we saw a tremendous increase in ridership and reliability in that UCAT system when buses became fare free. I think that the Hudson Valley should probably have a dramatic improvement in its bus infrastructure. And I think that can be done through a bill that I think Senator Hinchey has proposed to create a Hudson Valley transportation system that would be outside of it, would essentially I forgot the exact terminology that she's using, but to bridge together the Orange, Dutchess, and Ulster bus systems into one Hudson Valley Transit Authority.
Well, lastly, a lot of your affordability messaging reminds me of Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado in his gubernatorial campaign. So have you thought about who you'll be endorsing or maybe voting for in a Democratic primary for governor?
I've thought a little bit about this. I seriously doubt that either Lieutenant Governor Delgado or Governor Hochul care a lot about what a city councilman from Poughkeepsie thinks
I don't know.
For an endorsement.
If it gets more contentious, maybe. Also, the governor seems to want to have everybody's support. So, I mean, I think she'll just be mad if you don't support her.
Here's what I believe on this, and I'm probably saying more than I should.
Please.
Yeah, I know you love that. My ultimate downfall, I tell people I'm way too honest to a fault, so I'm always going to speak my mind, and I think that's how more people and more politicians should really be. as far as I'm concerned, Governor Hochul has done a lot for the Hudson Valley. It's been a focus for her. She, like I said, I'm really thankful for what she's been able to help deliver for improved transit service to the Hudson Valley, the amount of state investment that she's been bringing to the Hudson Valley, especially since my colleague, the phenomenal Mayor Yvonne Flowers in the city of Poughkeepsie, has taken office. We've seen a tremendous amount of state investment in the city of Poughkeepsie. And I also believe that Lieutenant Governor Delgado did a phenomenal job representing parts of the Hudson Valley when he was in Congress. He stands for and fights for things that I believe in, that I've believed in for a long time. Both of these individuals care a lot about the Hudson Valley, and I think for good reason. And so I'm interested to see what they're both going to bring to the table throughout this campaign. Like I said, my message is about ensuring people can afford to live and about rebuilding a broken system. Like I said, we can't tinker around the edges and think everything's going to be fine. We need wholesale change to make sure that this system is working for regular people and not the billionaires and the special interests anymore. And so I'm interested to see where everyone ends up on the issues that matter most in that governor's race.
Well, I know I said that was my last question, but since you brought up that issue of candidness, there's been this argument in political consulting world that people are really looking for the new A word, not affordability, but authenticity with politicians, and that, it's okay if you stumble during an interview. It's okay if on the stump you make a mistake because that connects with people. And I'm curious if you embrace that. Clearly, coming into this unscripted setting, you must to some degree. But what do you think about that idea that you can be human on the campaign trail? Or is that not the type of advice that you would want to take at this point? And you feel like you'd like to have everything as controlled and hermetically sealed as possible?
My favorite thing to do is to, tell anyone who's coming at me with a poll tested message to go, shove it, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm running this race based on what I believe in, what I've always believed in, and what I have seen has been productive for helping people throughout the course of my life and what I've studied throughout history. So this idea that we're going to cook up in a lab that Democratic pollsters or whoever, Republican pollsters and consultants are going to come together and conjure this superior, authentic candidate is just a ridiculous notion.
You're not like John Fetterman Jr. with
listen,
the
just
look
because
right
I'm
now?
bald with a big beard and I'm a big guy. No, I mean, people are gonna. Once they start paying attention to this race, they're going to call me, who knows what they're going to call me, right? And I'm not going to get my feelings hurt with whatever they want to call me. But look, I am who I am. I know what I believe in, and that is what's most important to me. Having worked for 6 years, as a city councilman, fighting in the city of Poughkeepsie, I've had a lot of stuff slung at me. I've been attacked by some nice people and some by some not so nice people, and quite frankly, what has been the most rewarding thing for me is just sticking to my guns, sticking to my values, fighting for people who need help, fighting to change a system that is broken and does not help the people who need it. Call that authenticity, call that whatever the hell you want to call it. I'm me. I'm Evan Menist. I know what I'm fighting for. I know who I'm fighting for. I know what I stand for, and quite frankly, none of the rest matters.
Well, that was Evan Menist. He is a Poughkeepsie Common Council member who's looking to represent the 39th Senate District starting in 2027. Evan, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. I really appreciate it.
Dave, thanks for having me, and it's been a pleasure. It's always great to be back in Albany.